Greenfield was not the kind of town where things usually went wrong. Everything moved like an old-fashioned clock, finely tuned and predictable. On a Saturday morning, the sun warmed the cobblestone streets, maple trees along the sidewalks danced in the gentle breeze, and locals strolled past tiny storefronts, exchanging polite nods like they always did. But somewhere within that postcard-perfect scene, there were things that did not run on gears and timing, but on prejudice. Malik knew that. He had felt it since he was a child, like a cold draft sneaking into a warm room, silent, invisible, yet suffocatingly real. And today he was about to face it again. He did not overthink that morning. It was just another day with one mission he had spent all summer preparing for, a birthday gift for his sister Amina. Malik had worked tirelessly at Patterson's bakery, waking at 6, wiping down counters, stocking shelves with pastries, taking orders from hurried housewives, standing for hours in the scent of baked butter and the jingle of the doorbell. He never complained. Every time his arms ached from lifting trays, he thought of Amina's face, the way her eyes would light up when she saw what he had chosen. A silver bracelet with a tiny star charm displayed behind the window of Eddington and Co, the jewelry store he passed almost daily. He always stopped just for a second to look through the glass. Eddington and Co was the oldest jewelry store in Greenfield, sitting at the corner of the main street, with its large glass windows catching the morning light and a hand-carved logo etched into dark oak. Not a place meant for boys like Malik, at least not in the eyes of some. But he did not care. That day, with his wages folded neatly in his wallet, Malik felt worthy of stepping through its doors. He had earned it, saved for it, and now was the time to give his sister something that showed how much he cared. That hope burned bright in him, so much so that he did not notice how, from the moment he touched the brass door handle, another story was being written. Not by him, but by someone else's eyes. He picked a collared shirt buttoned all the way up and wore a light gray hoodie unzipped. He wanted to look proper, but also comfortable, like himself. A normal boy with a kind heart. But he knew too well that in some places people did not see those things. They saw skin tone, posture, or a hoodie and wrote an ending to a story that had not even begun. He reached the store's entrance hand resting on the polished brass handle. A deep breath. Then he pushed open the door. A soft bell rang. Inside was another world, glossy and still scented with polished wood and expensive perfume. The chandelier's light bounced off rows of diamonds, pendants, and gemstone-studded watches. Elegant women leaned over glass cases, their hair flawless voices, soft, admiring items that glittered like dreams. Most did not look at Malik. A few glanced, then turned away. He walked to the central counter. The bracelet was there, resting on black velvet. Behind the counter stood a woman he had never met, but immediately recognized. She appeared to be in her 50s, platinum haircut, short, thin glasses resting low on her nose, and gray-blue eyes that scanned him not with curiosity but judgment. Eyes that had already decided. Malik offered a polite smile and a small nod. He pointed at the bracelet. "I would like to see this one." His voice was soft, respectful, just as his mother had always taught him. But the woman did not respond right away. Her arms crossed, her eyes narrowed slightly. Her voice came out smooth, almost casual. "Are you sure you can afford it? It is not cheap." Malik had expected this. He opened his wallet and laid out the cash he had saved. Each bill carefully stacked clean straight. This was the result of 46 early mornings, 46 shifts on his feet. He placed the money on the glass. "I saved enough," he said calmly. Her eyes remained cold. She looked at the cash with something between distaste and disbelief. Then came the question that sliced through the quiet like ice cracking. "And where did this money come from? Your mother? Or did you just find it on the street?" Malik froze. His heart thudded once hard, but he did not let the anger show. He breathed deep, steady. "I work at Patterson's Bakery on South Creek. I work the morning shift. I earned it." Each word came out clear, simple, deliberate. Still, all he received in return was a huff of air through her nose. The kind that dismissed not only his answer, but the idea that he had the right to answer at all. Malik understood. It was not about what he had done, but what he looked like. His presence alone was an offense to her. Still he stood there, eyes on the silver bracelet that meant more than metal and charm. It was a symbol, a quiet declaration that a boy like him could love deeply, give freely, and believe in joy despite the weight of everything stacked against him. But the woman did not see that, or perhaps she refused to. And Malik began to realize slowly but clearly that this shopping trip would not end the way others did. Because this place on this day was still a place where he was seen as an outsider, someone to be watched, someone whose story could be rewritten by the smallest mistake. And that mistake he feared was already coming. The brass handle felt cool in his hand as Malik took a breath and pushed the heavy oak door open. A soft chime announced his entrance. The inside of Eddington and Co. was silent and polished as if untouched by time or dust. Overhead, a grand chandelier threw shards of light onto the glass counters, below casting halos on the velvet trays that held tiny crowns of silver and gold. The air was a careful blend of aged wood and expensive perfume. Wealth lingered here, not just in the price tags, but in the posture of the women browsing, in the quiet confidence of their glances, in the unhurried rhythm of luxury. Malik stepped inside with the cautious grace of someone who knew he was being watched before any eyes had turned his way. His sneakers were clean, his shirt tucked, his hoodie unzipped, but none of those things mattered. He was aware of how the world worked. He did not expect warmth. All he wanted was a bracelet. He spotted it immediately nestled inside the central glass case, resting on a velvet cushion like a silver promise. The woman behind the counter turned slowly as he approached. She was in her 50s with platinum blonde hair cut sharp to the jaw glasses, perched on a narrow nose and eyes that did not blink. She did not look surprised to see him. She looked prepared. Malik offered a polite nod and pointed to the bracelet. "I would like to see that one, please." His voice was calm, respectful, shaped by every lesson his mother had ever taught him about how to survive being polite in places that doubted you. The woman did not move immediately, her arms crossed, her lips pressed into a thin, almost bored line. Then came the question, "Are you sure? That one is not cheap." The words were not loud, but they carried weight. Malik kept his smile steady. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out his wallet, removing the carefully folded bills he had counted 3 times that morning. "I have enough," he said, and laid the money flat on the counter. Her eyes flicked down to the cash, then back up sharper now. "Where did you get all that?" Her tone was too casual, the kind of casual that knew exactly what it was doing. Malik's fingers curled slightly. "I work at Patterson's Bakery," he replied. 6 a.m. shifts all summer. I earned it." The woman let out a quiet hum, not quite disbelieving, not quite believing. She tapped a long nail on the glass, "and I'm supposed to take your word for it." Malik felt the first edge of anger scrape against his ribs, but he kept his voice even. "You can call them if you like." "I'm in the system." She did not answer. Instead, after another pause, she turned and finally unlocked the display. She retrieved the velvet tray, set it on the counter with careful hands, then looked him in the eye. "Be careful with it. That piece is worth more than some people's rent." Malik nodded, reached out, and lifted the bracelet. It was lighter than he expected, smooth. The tiny star-shaped charm swayed gently as he turned it. He imagined how Amina's eyes would widen the moment she saw it. His hands were steady, but the bracelet was small. It slipped. It hit the glass with a soft metallic click and bounced on to the tiled floor. A simple accident, barely a sound, barely a moment, but it was all it took. The woman gasped, sharp and theatrical. "I knew it," she snapped. "I knew you were up to something." Her voice rose, slicing through the quiet like a blade. "You were trying to pocket it, weren't you? Thought I wouldn't notice." Malik froze. "No," he began, but she was already reaching for the phone, her fingers stabbing the keypad. Her voice grew louder, urgent, as if a crisis had exploded. "Yes, this is Eddington and Co. Send someone now. We have a thief, young male, black hoodie, tried to steal a bracelet. Still in the store." Malik could not move, could not speak. He looked around, felt every eye turn toward him. The women near the displays had backed away, one of them clutching her purse tighter. Another whispered something, her eyes wide. The room tilted. The bracelet still lay on the floor, harmless, silent. Malik stood straight. "I did not steal anything," he said, his voice low and controlled. "You know that." The woman's lip curled. "Do not play innocent," she said. "I've seen your type before. You walk in pretending like you belong. Wait for a chance to slip something into your pocket." Malik said nothing. There was nothing he could say that she would believe. And then, outside, the rising wail of sirens tore through the morning. Malik's stomach dropped. He had seen this scene before. He had heard it retold in living rooms, read it in headlines, watched it in grainy videos, shared through clenched teeth and angry hearts. But now it was happening to him, and the story was already writing itself. The sirens grew louder and clearer until they seemed to pierce the glass walls of the store. Malik did not flinch. He stood there, his hands relaxed at his sides, not in surrender, but in restraint. He knew exactly how quickly things could turn when someone like him made one wrong move. The woman behind the counter straightened her back with quiet triumph, as if the sound of law enforcement was her reward. The customers had already retreated toward the corners of the store, whispering softly among themselves, throwing glances filled with a strange mix of fear and curiosity. The door opened again. Two police officers entered their steps, firm boots echoing against the marble floor. One was tall, with a heavy build and sharp jaw, probably in his 50s, with a face that had long forgotten the softness of hesitation. The other was younger, leaner eyes, still curious but cautious, taking in the details quickly. The older officer walked straight toward Malik. "Hands where I can see them," he said. Malik obeyed without delay, lifting his palms slowly to chest height. "I did not do anything, sir," he said, voice low but steady. The woman behind the counter cut in sharply. "He dropped the bracelet," she said, "and it looked like he was trying to slip it into his pocket. I have seen that move before. They act clumsy, then walk away with whatever they can hide." Malik turned his head slightly toward the younger officer. "It slipped," he said, "just fell. You can check the cameras. I never touched my pocket." The older officer glanced at the woman. She nodded, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. The younger officer walked to the counter, picked up the bracelet from the floor, then looked around. "Is there surveillance in this area?" he asked. The woman gestured toward the ceiling. "Of course. The entire store is covered." The younger officer nodded and reached for his radio, requesting access to the footage. The older one remained in front of Malik. "What is your name?" "Malik Johnson." "Do you have ID?" "In my back pocket." The officer looked at him, then carefully retrieved the wallet from Malik's jeans. He opened it, found the student ID, the folded bills still inside. The younger officer returned after a few moments. "The footage shows he dropped it, sir. His hand never went near his hoodie pocket. He reached for it and lost grip. That is all." A quiet moment passed. The older officer did not look at Malik right away. He turned to the woman instead. "Ma'am, there is no evidence of intent to steal. It was an accident. The bracelet is undamaged." The woman's face tightened. "He was nervous," she insisted. "That says something. People who have nothing to hide do not look like that." The younger officer spoke this time. "Nervousness is not a crime, ma'am." And he was completely cooperative. Malik kept his eyes straight ahead, not defiant, just steady. He wanted to believe that the truth would settle the air, that logic would be enough. But he knew better. He knew that in some places the truth only mattered when it matched what people already believed. The older officer handed back his wallet. "You are free to go," he said, tone flat. Malik nodded and took it. He looked at the bracelet still sitting on the counter. Then he turned toward the door. But before he could step out, the younger officer called out, "Hey!" Malik stopped. The officer walked over. "You handled yourself well," he said quietly. "Some people would have panicked." Malik looked at him. "If I had panicked, I might not be walking out." The officer hesitated, then nodded once. Malik left without another word. The sun outside was still warm, but something in the light now felt colder. People on the sidewalk moved past him, unaware of what had just happened inside. For a moment, Malik stood still, hand clutching the wallet in his pocket. He thought of Amina. He thought of the bracelet. And he thought of how a single moment, a single glance could almost erase everything he had worked for. But almost was not the same as did. He kept walking. Malik stood by the bus stop, the envelope of cash still tucked in his jacket. He could have gone home. Could have brought Amina some flowers instead. Could have pretended that the bracelet was never an option. But the thought lingered sharp and unshakable. that he had done everything right, that he had walked in with respect, with manners, with the full price of the item he wanted, and still he was treated like a criminal. The bus arrived. He didn't board. He turned back. His legs moved before his thoughts could stop them. This wasn't about a bracelet anymore. He walked down Elm Street, past the bakery, past the bookstore, until the brick walls of the police department came into view. Inside, the receptionist lifted her head. "Can I help you?" "I want to speak to whoever's in charge of community complaints," Malik said. His voice didn't shake. He was directed to an office down the hall. A woman in a navy blazer greeted him. He sat down. "I want to file a report about what happened at Eddington and Co," he said. "I wasn't arrested, but I was accused of theft without evidence, and the store owner called the police before even talking to me." She took notes as he spoke, asked for times, names, descriptions. She did not interrupt. When he finished, she said, "We'll look into it." It was routine, courteous. But Malik knew the tone of bureaucracy. Nothing would happen. He walked home with heavy steps. That night, he couldn't sleep. The next morning, he got up early and found his mother in the kitchen. She was stirring oatmeal, eyes still puffy with sleep. He sat down. "Mom, do you think people can change?" She looked at him for a long second, then said, "Only when they're forced to see what they refuse to believe." Malik nodded. "I'm going back to that store." His mother froze. Her spoon stopped midair. "No," she said. "Absolutely not. You already walked away safely. That's enough." "It's not," he said. His voice was quiet, but there was something firm in it. "I want to look her in the eye and ask her one question." His mother didn't speak. He waited. Finally, she said, "Then I'm going with you." At 11 that morning, they stood in front of Eddington and Company. The sun was hot on the pavement. Malik opened the door. The same chime, the same scent, the same woman behind the counter. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, her entire posture shifted. He saw the recognition, and then something else, discomfort. She looked at the woman beside him, and something clicked in her gaze. Malik's mother stepped forward. "I'm Dr. Helen Johnson," she said, "professor of ethics at Greenfield University. This is my son." The woman behind the counter stiffened. "Yes, we remember," she said quickly. "Is there something we can help with today?" Malik didn't look away. "I came to ask one thing. Did I ever give you any reason to think I was going to steal?" The woman opened her mouth and closed it again. "I acted on instinct," she finally said. "People make judgments. Sometimes they're wrong." Malik nodded. "So you admit you were wrong?" She hesitated, then quietly, "Yes." Malik's mother leaned in slightly. "And what will you do next time you see a young man like my son walk in?" The woman swallowed. "I'll think twice. That's all I can promise." Malik turned to leave. His mother followed. Outside, she touched his arm. "You ask. That's more than most people do." Malik said nothing. He just looked at the street, the sunlight, the quiet town that had almost swallowed him. Not today. It should have ended there, a quiet confrontation followed by a few nods and a door gently shutting. But Greenfield, small as it was, had its way of echoing things louder than intended. That same afternoon, someone posted a short clip on social media taken discreetly inside Eddington and Company. It showed Malik standing by the counter, his wallet open, the clerk's narrowed gaze fixed on him. No sound, just 30 seconds of frozen distrust. The caption read, "This kid tried to buy a bracelet, not rob the place." The video gained traction fast. By evening, hundreds had shared it. By morning, thousands. The town that never made national news was suddenly on everyone's feed. Local forums buzzed with speculation. Some defended the clerk, saying she was just cautious. Others demanded her resignation. But one comment stood out. A former employee of Eddington and Co wrote, "This isn't the first time. She's done this before." Accused a delivery boy last spring. Police were called. No charges, of course. He was brown too. The post took off. Reporters called the store. They called Malik's school. They called the police department. Most got no response. But the silence only fueled curiosity. The footage became a symbol, not of theft or innocence, but of how quickly a story can tilt when the narrator holds the power. Malik kept quiet. He didn't repost the clip. He didn't give interviews. But inside him, something changed. He had never wanted a spotlight. But now that it was here, burning hot and merciless, he refused to shrink from it. His mother watched the storm unfold. She answered no calls, declined all press. At dinner, she said, "You understand what this means?" Malik nodded. "I didn't ask for it," he said, "but I'm not afraid of it." That night, they sat by the window, the bracelet lying quietly on the table between them, still wrapped, still untouched. A gift that had almost never made it home. Malik looked at it for a long time. Then he said, "Do you think they'll forget?" His mother replied, "Only if we let them." 3 days after the video first surfaced, the door of Eddington and Co opened again with a quiet chime. But this time it was not Malik who entered. It was a woman in a tailored navy blue suit, heels sharp against the floor, her presence cutting through the air like a blade. Her hair was pulled back, her eyes cool and focused. She walked with purpose, unhurried but unmistakable. The clerk looked up, startled by the aura before her. The woman said nothing at first. She simply reached into her bag and pulled out a badge, flipping it open with practiced ease. Chief of Police, it read. Simone Carter. The room fell into a hush. One of the assistants dropped a pen. The clerk's lips parted slightly, but no words came. Simone's voice, when it came, was soft, but it carried the weight of silence behind it. "I believe you met my son," she said. The sentence was simple. Devastating. The clerk blinked, then blinked again. Her fingers gripped the counter. She looked around as if hoping someone would interrupt, change the subject, invent a distraction. None came. Simone placed the badge flat on the glass. "You accused him. You called the police. You never checked the cameras, is that correct?" The clerk swallowed. I followed protocol. He dropped the bracelet, I thought. You thought he was stealing." Simone finished the sentence. Even though he offered payment, even though he said where he worked, even though the bracelet was still on the floor when officers arrived, the clerk's throat bobbed. Simone leaned slightly forward. "My son has never asked for special treatment. He did not mention my name. He did not call for backup. He stood here and waited. Do you understand what that means?" The clerk nodded stiffly. Her hands were pale, now knuckles tight. Simone exhaled slowly. "I'm not here to yell. I'm not here to threaten. But this shop and this town will answer for what happened here. The cameras will be reviewed, the report will be filed, the record will be public, and your name will be on it. The clerk opened her mouth, perhaps to protest, perhaps to explain. Simone raised one hand, gently palm down. No more words, just accountability. Then she turned and walked out the way she came, leaving the bracelet, the silence, and the truth behind her. Outside, the sun was bright, too bright. A few pedestrians slowed their steps. A couple looked down at their phones, already reading the news. Malik stood by the car, watching. His mother nodded once. "It has begun," she said. And Malik understood. Some storms start not with thunder, but with a name spoken aloud in the right room. Malik sat on the edge of his bed, elbows on knees, hands clasped, tight eyes fixed on the floor. The bracelet was no longer the center of the story, yet it remained in every detail, in every thought that returned without warning. He had not spoken much since the confrontation. He had answered questions when needed, nodded when spoken to, but mostly he had listened. To the hum of the news, to the sound of quiet apologies from people who had once turned away, to the steady voice of his mother making calls behind closed doors. But the loudest sound was always the silence that came after someone looked at him, remembered what they had seen on the footage, and didn't know what to say. That silence was not empty. It carried weight. It said, "We did not expect you to survive with dignity." It said, "We only see you now because someone important said your name." It said, "We looked the other way when it mattered." Malik was not angry, not anymore. What he felt now was something colder, something still, like a lake frozen at the surface, beautiful but dangerous underneath. His sister Amina peeked into the room, holding her sketch pad close. She tiptoed in, sat beside him, and rested her head against his shoulder. "I drew you today," she said quietly. "Want to see?" Malik turned his head slowly, eyes softening. She opened her sketchbook and showed him a pencil drawing. It was him standing, straight hands in his hoodie pocket with a bracelet in his palm and a shadow behind him shaped like a lion. He blinked. "You made me look brave." Amina tilted her head. "You are. You didn't yell. You didn't cry. You didn't run." Malik looked at the drawing again. The lion behind him stared ahead, eyes calm but watching. "Do you know what courage looks like?" Amina asked. "It looks like standing still when no one else does." Malik smiled just a little. Not because he felt better, but because someone still saw him beyond what the others assumed. That evening, as the sun melted behind the rooftops of Greenfield, Malik stepped out onto the porch. His mother was there, sitting with a laptop on her knees, reading an email aloud in a measured tone. The internal review had been launched. Sergeant Blake was suspended pending investigation. Margaret's employment had been officially terminated. A public statement would be released at dawn. They wanted to meet Malik, issue a personal apology. Malik listened without reacting. He folded his arms, eyes watching the street. Finally, he said, "I don't want their apology." Simone closed the laptop slowly. "That's your right." He turned to her. "I just want to know what they saw when they looked at me." She didn't answer right away. She looked out into the distance, her face unreadable. Then she said, "They saw a story they wrote long before you walked in. And it will take more than truth to erase it." Malik nodded. In the window, his reflection stared back at him. Not a criminal, not a headline, just a boy who tried to buy a gift and learned too soon what the world still refuses to see. 3 days had passed since the day Malik stepped into the jewelry store and came out with something far heavier than a bracelet. The town of Greenfield, usually slow and serene, now hummed with quiet tension. News of the incident had spread beyond its borders. Local television covered it with solemn faces and polite outrage. Articles appeared online headlines circling like vultures over a moment that had nearly spiraled into tragedy. Belmont and Company had shut its doors temporarily. A sign on the glass read for maintenance, but everyone knew better. The real repairs could not be done with a broom or paint. Malik watched it all from the corner of the living room, curled up on the couch, while Amina sat cross-legged beside him. Their mother moved between phone calls and meetings, orchestrating responses, reviewing statements, and rejecting lukewarm gestures of redemption from people who wanted the story to fade. Malik had barely touched his phone, barely spoken to his friends. The messages they sent were supportive, angry, embarrassed, but none of them changed. How it felt to know that no one in that store had spoken up until the badge arrived. The footage was undeniable. He had done nothing wrong, but what lingered wasn't the relief of innocence. It was the fact that without that footage, without his mother's title, without the pause in the younger officer's eyes, things would have ended differently. That knowing carved itself into him like an invisible scar. At school, whispers followed him like shadows. Some classmates tried to pretend nothing had happened. Others offered stares that said everything. His teachers avoided the topic altogether. Only one Mr. Daniels had pulled him aside and said, "I am so sorry. Not just for what happened, but for all the times we let the silence speak louder than we did." Malik had nodded but said nothing. He did not need more apologies. He needed the world to stop building traps for people like him and calling them misunderstandings. That afternoon, while walking home, Malik passed by a group of younger kids tossing a basketball around the playground. One of them dropped the ball and it rolled toward him. He bent down, picked it up, and tossed it back. The kid smiled. "You're that guy from the news, right?" Malik hesitated, then shrugged. "I guess." The boy tilted his head. "Did you really do nothing wrong?" Malik looked at him for a long moment before replying, "Sometimes doing nothing is what they're afraid of most." The kid blinked, unsure how to respond, then mumbled a quiet thanks and ran back to his friends. Malik continued walking. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the concrete carried the weight of all the assumptions people placed on him. When he reached home, Simone was at the kitchen table drafting a formal response to the city council's inquiry. She looked up when he entered and studied his face carefully. "You look tired." Malik sat down across from her. "I am." She nodded slowly, then closed her laptop. You know, people keep calling what happened a misunderstanding, like it was a moment of confusion. But it wasn't. It was a decision made in seconds, and that's what makes it dangerous. Malik tapped the edge of the table, fingers restless. "Then, what do? We make it visible," Simone replied. "We name it. We document it. We refuse to shrink." Malik exhaled. It sounded simple. It wasn't. But maybe that was the only way forward. Not to fix everything in one day, but to make sure that what happened to him would not vanish into silence. Not again. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Malik found himself back in the town center, walking along the very path he had taken days earlier. The shops looked the same. The air still smelled of roasted coffee and fresh bread. But everything felt different. His feet stopped in front of Belmont and Company. The windows were still covered, the store still closed, yet he could see his reflection clearly in the glass. For a long moment he simply stood there, not moving, not blinking. It was not the store he was looking at, but the shadow of that moment, the weight of those seconds where the truth could have drowned beneath a single lie. Behind him, footsteps approached. He turned slightly to see Officer Doyle standing a few paces away, hands in his pockets, gaze lowered, posture uncertain. Malik said nothing. Doyle stepped forward, then paused as if unsure whether he was welcome. "I shouldn't be here if you don't want me to be," he said quietly. Malik glanced at him, the same calm stare he had used when facing a woman who lied without blinking. "You hesitated that day," Malik said. "Not enough to stop it, but enough to show it bothered you." Doyle nodded, guilt carved into his face. "I should have spoken. I should have questioned her right away. I didn't. I hesitated because I was afraid of getting it wrong." Malik looked away, voice steady. "But you already had it wrong by standing silent." Doyle exhaled, shoulders falling. "I know. And I won't pretend a sorry will fix it. But I want to be better." Malik studied him, then asked, "Do you believe that what she did was an isolated moment?" Doyle hesitated. I think it's what a lot of us have let slide for too long." Malik gave a short nod, then turned back to the window. The silence between them stretched, not heavy, but not light either. Finally, Doyle said, "If you ever want to talk about ways we can change things, I'm listening." Malik didn't reply, but he didn't dismiss him either. That was enough for now. Later that evening, back at home, Amina ran up to him, holding a notebook. She had drawn something, a charm bracelet with each link shaped like a word. One said strength, another said truth, another simply said Malik. She grinned. "I'm going to make this one day," she said proudly. Malik smiled faintly. That one would be worth more than anything in that store. As night fell and the lights dimmed, Malik sat by the window, watching the quiet rhythm of the street below. The world outside seemed calm, still, but inside him something remained awake. Not anger, not fear. Something steadier. A resolve that no lie could steal. He had walked through the fire and come out burned but standing. And now the world had seen it too. 3 days later, the story had spread far beyond Greenfield. News anchors spoke Malik's name with grave expressions, hashtags multiplied by the hour, and video clips of Simone Carter standing firm inside the jewelry store were replayed on every major network. But Malik did not care about that. What mattered to him was not the headlines, not the sudden flood of voices calling for change. It was the sound of Amina laughing in the living room, her silver bracelet catching the light as she twirled in delight. It was knowing that his mother had not only protected him, but turned her authority into a shield and a sword when he needed it most. Still, the question lingered in his mind. What if she had not been there? What if the security footage had been erased? What if the officer had been someone without doubt in his eyes? Justice had arrived, yes, but it came by inches, not leaps. That evening, he found Simone in her study, typing up what looked like the final version of the department's new anti-profiling policy. She glanced up and smiled. "You want to read it?" Malik stepped inside, nodded slowly. She handed him the papers and he scanned them in silence. After a moment, he asked, "Will it work?" Simone folded her hands, her voice quiet but unflinching. "It will not stop everything, but it will make them think twice. It will give them consequences." Malik looked at her, the weight of understanding in his eyes. "That is a beginning." She smiled again. "Sometimes beginnings are all we get." Outside, dusk had settled over Greenfield, casting long shadows across the streets. The town looked the same, but Malik knew better now. He had stepped into a space that had not wanted him. He had been measured, judged, nearly erased. And yet, he was still here. That was power. That was survival. That was truth. As he stepped outside and breathed in the night air, Malik thought of the bracelet again. Not the one in the box, but the one in Amina's drawing. A bracelet made of words like strength and truth and love. No store in Greenfield could sell it, no price tag could measure it, and no lie, no glare, no accusation could ever take it from him. Not anymore.